Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one-stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. This is Shyam Good here, taking up a detailed discussion on the concept of inflation targeting in today's session. This is part of the new initiative that we have launched. Today, I'll be taking inflation targeting. We'll have a detailed discussion, also solve certain questions in the process of the discussion. And tomorrow, I'll be taking up the topic of GST 2.0. The government of India earlier introduced a GST and very recently announced reforms under the GST. That particular session will be live again tomorrow, same time. Do not forget to join that particular session live. Now, let me start the discussion. In today's session, let's have a detailed discussion about the concept of inflation targeting. Historically, if you see, at multiple points of time, there have been frictions between the government as well as the Reserve Bank of India. The friction has been on the idea of whether the growth should be given the priority or controlling inflation should be given the priority. The governments historically have been focused on promotion of growth, and the central banker historically has been worried about controlling, maintaining inflation in the domestic market. So when you have two different objectives and both of these cannot go hand in hand, and I'll prove that why in some time, there is bound to be frictions between the government as well as the central banker. And this idea of inflation targeting has been basically arrived at as an agreement between both the government as well as the central banker, and it is going to pacify this particular point of friction between both of them. What is the issue? Let's understand in detail in today's discussion. Now, to understand the concept of inflation targeting, you need to understand certain basics first. And before I start with the basics, please do let me know in the chat section that I'm audible and visible for all of you. Please do let me know, am I audible and visible for all of you? Kanhaiya Gupta is asking, is this topic relevant only for prelims? Absolutely no, my dear. It's relevant for both prelims as well as mains. Done. Let's start then. So these are certain very important basics. First, let's understand the basics and then we will use the basics to build the advanced concept. The first one is the concept of monetary policy. Now, whenever you read the subject of economy, you'll come across two very important concepts. One is the fiscal policy, and the second one is the monetary policy. What is essentially the difference between both of them? The fiscal policy is used by the government. It is formulated, implemented by the government. And what does the government do in this particular fiscal policy? It essentially uses this particular policy to influence taxation, to influence expenditure. Please remember this. The policy which involves taxation and expenditure by the government essentially is called as a fiscal policy. Now, on the other hand, there is also policy called as monetary policy. Monetary policy is formulated by Reserve Bank of India, RBI. And the Reserve Bank of India will use the monetary policy and the tools under the monetary policy to manage the money supply in the economy. To manage the money supply, that is, whenever RBI needs to promote growth, what is the meaning of the growth here? Growth essentially focuses on the concept of gross domestic product. If the objective of Reserve Bank of India is to promote GDP, increase in the GDP number, that is essentially the growth, then RBI will increase the money supply. And if the objective of Reserve Bank of India, let's say right now, is to control inflation, then RBI will reduce the money supply. So according to the requirement, I repeat, according to the requirement, whenever RBI changes the money supply, that is essentially the concept of monetary policy. So everybody is okay with the first point here. Please do let me know in the chat section. I want a two-way communication. Do keep on letting me know that you are understanding the concept. So first one is the term monetary policy. Second, the concept of inflation. What is inflation in a nutshell? Inflation simply means change in the price levels for basket of commodities. Basket means it is a group. Basket is nothing but a group. And by the way, before I start explaining, please do not keep on writing down whatever I'm explaining. Don't. After the session is over, after the session is over, the PPT along with the handouts will be uploaded. Please download. So what is inflation? Whenever there is a change in the price levels of the basket of commodities, that is a group of commodities, when the prices will change, that is called as inflation. It is called as inflation. Now, in case of inflation, right now, what is the most important indicator for measuring inflation? The indicator that you need to remember in the concept of inflation targeting is the term consumer price index. Consumer price index. In short, CPI. Please remember. Henceforth, if I keep on using the term CPI in this particular session, it refers to consumer price index and not a political party, by the way. Right? So, consumer price index. So, the consumer price index is the price measure of the changes of the basket of commodities that you and me consume, that you and me purchase from the market and we consume on day-to-day basis. It will have in the basket, it will have the vegetables, it will have pulses, it will have, right, let's say fruits, it will have, right, let's say the products such as the fuel commodities, etc. So there are 299, I repeat, 299 goods plus services in the basket, and the change in the price of this is basically nothing but consumer price index. Second concept is clear to everyone here. Everybody is on the same page. Let me go to the third one here. The headline versus core, food inflation, and the fifth one is supply side versus demand side. What is the headline versus core inflation? The headline inflation simply means you take the complete basket. I repeat, you take the complete basket. And in case of complete basket, how many goods and services are there? 299 goods plus services. So you take the basket which has all the 299 goods plus services, and now you find out, you measure by how much percentage the price levels have increased. This is called as headline inflation. Now, against headline inflation, there is one more indicator called as core inflation. What is this core inflation? Core inflation simply measures the inflation excluding certain goods from the basket. Excluding certain goods from the basket. What are the goods? There are food commodities and there are fuel commodities. I repeat, there are food as well as fuel commodities. Why should we exclude them from the basket? Why should we remove them from the basket and then measure the change in the price level of the basket? The reason is very simple. Please do let me know in the chat section. All of you will agree the prices of food and fuel are unstable. I'll repeat the statement. The prices of food and fuel are unstable. I'll use the term unstable. Instead of unstable, they can also use the term short lived. They can also use the term temporary. Is it okay? The prices of food and fuel are short lived in nature, are temporary in nature. That is, in 1 month, the prices of food and fuel will go upwards. The next 1 month, they will crash. The third month, again, they will rise. Fourth and fifth month, they will fall, etc. So, because these particular price levels are unstable, temporary, or short lived, we exclude the food and fuel commodities from the basket and we measure the price changes for the remaining basket. And that, my dear, is called as core inflation. Now I'll ask you a question. I want answer from all of you, whoever is present in the session. Between headline and core, please tell me which is a better measure of inflation, which is a more stable measure of inflation. I'll repeat the question. Between headline and core, which is more stable measure of inflation? All of you will agree? Okay. Most of you are saying core, but there are certain students who are saying headline. My dear, please listen to me carefully. Between headline and core, core is a, right, let's say, much more stable measure of inflation. Much more stable measure. Why? The headline includes food and fuel articles. And the changes in the food and fuel articles are not permanent in nature. These are influenced by multiple domestic factors as well as international factors. For example, the crude oil prices. Don't you think these are very volatile? And whenever anything happens in the Middle East, Russia Ukraine war, Mr. Donald Trump announcing something, etc., or what is happening in the Red Sea, etc., don't you think all of these will have a greater influence of the over the price of the fuel that is consumed in India? Correct? And this is not a permanent change. It's very temporary. Just to make it much more understandable, let me take one more example very closer to the home now. In India right now, there are multiple regions, I repeat, multiple regions within India where agriculture is being conducted, but at the same point of time, flooding is also happening. Correct? All of you are able to understand? Flooding is also taking place. So, this particular flooding will disturb or will basically destabilize agriculture production. Supply would be affected. And as a result of a lower supply, the market prices will start increasing. Do you think this particular change in the market price is permanent in nature? This will keep on happening after 2 months, after 3 months, after 4 months again. Right? So I hope you understand these kind of changes are temporary in nature, short lived in nature, right? And these generally, that's the reason the food and fuel commodities are excluded to calculate core, which is much more a stable measure of inflation. At least now everybody will accept that is between headline and core. Core is much more a stable measure of inflation compared to the headline. Now, food inflation. What do you mean by food inflation? In case of consumer price index, I've written the term CPI. Consumer price index, there are 299 commodities. We take only the food articles. We take only the food articles and measure what is the change in the price level of this particular food articles basket. We measure the changes in the prices of only the food articles. And that, my dear, is called as food inflation. And one more important point here, supply side versus demand side inflation. Supply side versus a demand side inflation. Now, what is the meaning of supply side as well as a demand side inflation? Please listen to me very carefully. And before I go forward, I know a lot of you are preparing on your own for the civil services examination. And to assist you, we are launching a new initiative on 18th, 19th, and 20th September. This initiative is basically a special class initiative on all the 3 days from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Multiple educators, the best educators on the Unacademy platform, will be taking special classes free of cost. All these special classes which will be scheduled, which schedule I'll show now, all of these are free of cost. Do not miss out on these particular special classes. For example, on 18th September, 7 p.m., I'm taking a special class on how to write mains answers. That is GS paper 3. I've given a list of the articles already. Certain set of articles I've given. You're supposed to read, come, and then we will have a discussion. I will give you questions. You are supposed to write, attempt these particular questions. On 18th and 19th, Sarmad sir will be taking polity sessions at 8 p.m. The 18th, 19th, and 20th at 1 p.m. Abhishek sir will be taking sessions on the history. 18th, 19th, and 20th, Mukesh sir will be taking at 5 p.m. the class 11th NCERT classes, 3 sessions. And again on 18th, 19th, and 20th, Chethan sir will also be taking special classes at 6 p.m. Please do not miss out on these particular sessions. These are relevant, especially for those particular aspirants who are making the preparation on their own. You need certain guidance. You need to understand important aspects of how to prepare, how to write an answer, what kind of questions are asked. Because without that, if you try to read everything on your own, the problem will be you may allocate extra time, unnecessary, more time. You might read unnecessary things, etc. So, for your benefit, these special classes have been scheduled. Please do not miss out these. Let me continue the discussion here. Supply side and the demand side inflation. Now, what is the supply side as well as the demand side inflation? Simple logic here. Supply side will basically look at the consumers. Okay, from the consumers or from the perspective of the consumers. Whenever the demand in the market goes up, whenever the demand for goods and services in the market will go up, essentially this will lead to higher market prices. MP is market prices here. MP is not the name of the state, it is market prices. So when the demand side, for example, sir, how does the demand go upwards? What if all of your salaries are increased? What if government of India will transfer a lot of subsidies into your account? What if the loans are available at a cheaper price in the market? So automatically lot of money will be there with the consumers. They will go to the market. They'll start purchasing the goods and services at higher prices. That will increase the demand, and this might start leading to increase in the market prices of the commodity. This is basically a factor or demand side factor which causes inflation. And this is called as a demand pull inflation. Demand pull inflation. Done? On the other side, opposite to this is a cost push inflation. Concept of cost push inflation. What is a cost push inflation? Whenever the supply side factors contribute to inflation, when supply side factors contribute to inflation, for example, what do you mean by this? Let's say the taxes imposed on the goods and services will go up. Please do participate and do let me know. Cost of raw materials will go up. Cost of labor goes up. Now, please tell me, as a result of these particular factors, automatically, don't you think cost of production will go upwards? And when the cost of production goes upwards, what do you think will happen to the market prices? The market prices will also go upwards. As a result of this, there will be inflation in the market, but this is referred to as cost push inflation. So everybody is okay with the discussion so far? Monetary policy and the inflation. Finally, there is one more argument here: growth versus inflation. Growth versus inflation. Why have I written versus here? Let me explain this. Whenever you want to achieve growth, what do you ensure? You will ensure, that is, RBI will ensure that there is a higher money supply in the economy. Higher money supply means what? More people will take loans. More companies will take loans. The demand for the goods and services will increase. The production and the supply of the goods and services will increase. And when the production of goods and services will start to increase, automatically you will be able to achieve, as an outcome, you will be able to achieve higher growth in the economy. Is the argument clear to all of you? But there is always a concern here. What is a concern? If production of goods and services starts to increase, it also means more people are getting jobs. There is a higher money supply in the economy. And when there is a higher money supply in the economy, can this lead to higher inflation as well? Because if you're earning more income, if loans are available at a cheaper rate of interest, it could also lead to excess demand for the goods and services. And if there's an excess demand for goods and services, it can contribute to inflationary trends in the market. So, if you want to promote growth, there is a danger that you might lead or you might contribute to higher inflationary trends. Correct? Everybody is able to understand this? Now, there is opposite argument of this. What is the opposite argument? Let's say you are the RBI governor. Time is 7:20 now. Congratulations, all of you. All of you are appointed as RBI governors. Now you are worried about inflation. Let's say you want to control inflation. So what will you do? You will reduce the money supply. You will reduce money supply. How you will reduce money supply? Simple. You will start to increase interest rates. You want the loans to be given but at higher rate of interest. And when the loans are given at a higher rate of interest because of lower money supply, don't you think consumers will take lesser loans? The companies will take lesser loans. The demand for the goods and services in the market will be lesser. As a result of this, what do you think will happen to the growth in the economy? The growth in the economy will be affected. Growth will become limited, but you will be able to control inflation, by the way. How? You have reduced money supply. Reduced money supply means reduced demand. Reduced demand means lower inflation. So you can achieve inflation, but at the cost of sacrificing growth. So in the second case, you can achieve the objective of controlling inflation, but you will have to sacrifice growth. In the first case, you can achieve high growth, but you will have to basically loosen. You will have to increase money supply. That is leading to a danger of higher inflation. So there is always this particular debate about growth versus inflation. If growth becomes the primary objective, inflation will start to increase. If controlling inflation will become the primary objective, you will have to sacrifice the growth. Right? So these are certain very important concepts. Before I go forward, I want a confirmation from all of yours, from all of you. Everybody is okay with the concepts that I've discussed so far? I've discussed these concepts because using this only, you'll be able to understand inflation targeting. Using these concepts only, we can understand the concept of inflation targeting. Now, let's go forward. Today, we have a concept of inflation targeting. That is basically from 2016, we have implemented flexible inflation targeting. But please understand, a lot of you will be having this kind of a confusion. If from 2016 we are basically following inflation targeting means before that, what was the model followed? Before 2016, what was the concept followed by Reserve Bank of India? The Reserve Bank of India was established on 1st April 1935. Remember this, factual information can be asked in the preliminary examination. RBI was established even before independence, 1st April 1935. And before 1935, there was passage of an act by the name of RBI Act of 1934. So first, RBI Act of 1934, and under that, the provisions under that, the 1st April 1935, we established Reserve Bank of India. And 1949, anybody knows what is the importance of the year 1949 in the context of RBI? Let me see. In the year 1949, what important event took place in the context of Reserve Bank of India? I'm asking in the context of Reserve Bank of India. Please don't tell me, sir, 1949. It was right the 20th birthday of my grandfather. No, Right? Don't tell me that it was 15th birthday of my grandmother. No, I'm not talking about that. 1949 in the context of Reserve Bank of India, that is nationalization. Reserve Bank of India was nationalized in the year 1949. Please remember that. Nationalization essentially means ownership was transferred from private to the government. From the private to the government, and basically the ownership was transferred. Done? Okay, everybody is okay. So, question will be, from 2016 we implemented inflation targeting. And I'll explain to you what is inflation targeting in some time, don't worry. But before that, what was the concept? What was followed by Reserve Bank of India? Please make a note of the evolution of monetary policy over the period of time. Please make a note of this. And when I say note, don't start scribbling. Don't start writing it down. Download the PPT, you can easily get the access to this. 1935 to 1949, that is before nationalization. The objective of Reserve Bank of India was to basically focus on exchange rate. Please remember that stability of the exchange rate. The initial phases of Reserve Bank of India was basically focusing on the exchange rate stability. 1949, nationalization took place. So 1949 to 1969. Can anybody tell me why did I basically make a note or divide this into 1949 into 1969? Any particular event that you can connect to the banking sector in India which basically signifies the year 1969? Anybody in the chat section, please do let me know. 1969, what was the reason why we have divided this era now? 1969, the first round of nationalization of the banks took place. The first round of nationalization, please remember this. Although we are discussing inflation targeting here and there, I'm giving you important factual data as well. The first round of nationalization of the banks took place. So in 1969, 14 banks were nationalized. Totally two rounds of nationalization have been done by the government. 1969, 14 banks, and 1980, the second round of nationalization happened in 1980, where 6 banks were nationalized. So 1949 to 1969, it was this particular time period when Reserve Bank of India was more focused on assisting to implement the 5-year plans. And when I say focused on assistance of implementation, ensure there is a sufficient credit supply in the market in order to meet the objective of the 5-year plans. The developmental phase where the focus was on growth as well as development. Then 1969 to 1985, this was the time period when the focus was on expansion of the credit. Essentially, the priority sectors were identified, and the focus was basically on promotion of credit accessibility into these particular right areas. And I have a look at this. There is also a term I've written here, deficit financing as well as inflation. What happened? What is this idea of a deficit financing? What is the connection to the Reserve Bank of India here? The deficit financing as a concept was followed earlier. Today it is not followed, by the way. Because 1997 we have abolished deficit financing. We have shifted to a new regime. What is a deficit financing? Very simple. Listen to me carefully. The government of India would spend more money compared to the money they were earning. I'll repeat the statement. The government would be spending more money compared to what they are earning. And because they are spending more compared to what they are earning, there will be deficit. Everybody is okay with the term deficit here. So what would the government do? Government would simply print the government securities, give it to Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India would provide money to the government. Is everybody okay with the concept of deficit financing here? Very simple logic. Don't complicate this issue. Government is spending more, earning lesser. Imagine government is spending 100 crore, earning 80 crore rupees. There is a deficit of 20 crore. What will the government do? Government will print securities. They were called as ad hoc treasuries. Ad hoc treasuries. Give it to the Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India will give money to Government of India. This was basically the concept of deficit financing. But now you just think of this. Just please think of this. If government will issue the treasuries to the RBI, take money from RBI, don't you think money supply in the economy is going to increase? Yes or no? Money supply in the economy will increase. And when money supply increases, can this be contributing to inflation in the domestic market? Of course, yes. So this is very inflationary in nature. Deficit financing will contribute to inflationary trends in the economy. That's the reason I've written both of them. And please understand, 1985, what happened? There was a committee recommendation, Chakravarti Committee recommendation. Chakravarti Committee recommendation. Please remember this committee recommendation also. The Chakravarti Committee recommendation was that the Reserve Bank of India should focus on the monetary framework. The Reserve Bank of India should formally adopt a monetary policy framework. And based on the recommendation of the Chakravarti Committee, 1985 to 1998, there was a concept of monetary targeting that was implemented by RBI. In the monetary targeting, basically the focus was on controlling inflation as well as promoting growth. Controlling inflation as well as promoting growth. But here there was one more issue. What was the issue? All of you understand the important economic event that has happened in 1991? Let me see how many of you know the economic history. What is the importance of the year 1991 connected to Indian economy? It was the time period when Government of India announced LPG reforms, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. So when the government announced the LPG reforms, is it fair to say the whole economic activity, the way the economic activities were conducted in India, there was a complete revamping of these economic activities? How the foreign companies entered into India, the foreign investors entering into India, the way investment was being done, the way companies were being set up, the way borrowings were done, etc. Because of the LPG reforms, now the Reserve Bank of India realized that the monetary targeting, the measure, or let's say the policy that was implemented back in 1985 fell short of the requirements. It was not sufficient. It was not meeting the requirements of the situation after the LPG reforms. And that is the precise reason why Reserve Bank of India did away with the concept of monetary targeting and implemented multiple indicator approach. RBI from 1995 to 2018 implemented a multiple indicator approach. What was done by Reserve Bank of India under multiple indicator approach? Under this, RBI simply said, yes, my focus will be on growth. My focus will be on controlling inflation. But in addition to these kind of indicators, I will also consider multiple other indicators for policy making. Is my point clear to all of you? Rather than focusing only on inflation and growth, now Reserve Bank of India simply said, not sufficient. I will make the policies based on multiple other indicators. For example, the flow of credit in the market, the total trade that is being conducted. For example, the total output in the Indian economy, exchange rates in the market, etc. Because multiple indicators were used by the Reserve Bank of India to make policies. This regime or the monetary policy framework is referred to as multiple indicator approach. And this multiple indicator approach went on to be implemented till 2015. And in 2015, there was an agreement between the government as well as the Reserve Bank of India. And this agreement is known by the name of Monetary Policy Framework Agreement. I'll write it, Monetary Policy Framework Agreement, MPFA. So in 2015, there was an agreement between the Government of India as well as the Reserve Bank of India that was referred to as MPFA. And after this, there was an amendment that was done in the RBI Act, Reserve Bank of India Act of 1934. And with these particular amendments, as well as the Monetary Policy Framework Agreement, the Reserve Bank of India started implementing the concept of flexible inflation targeting. From the year 2016, Reserve Bank of India started implementing flexible inflation target. In short, FIT. I'll start using the term FIT now, right? A flexible inflation targeting. This is essentially the evolution. What kind of modes have been used by the Reserve Bank of India? What kind of policies have been used by Reserve Bank of India historically, starting from 1935 till 2016? And from 2016 even today, Reserve Bank of India uses flexible inflation targeting, which we will start discussing now. But before that, I'll give you a question. Please solve this particular question as soon as possible, and do let me know what is the correct answer in the chat section. Let me see how many of you are listening to the discussion very carefully. How many of the following pairs are correctly matched? The time period, sorry, the time period as well as the inferences. Okay. How many are correctly matched? How many pairs? Right. One pair, two pair, three pair, and four pair. Please don't ask me the fifth option, sir. What if I say none of the above? There is no option of none of the above or none of the pairs, by the way. Most of you are saying B, some of you are saying option C. Okay. One person said A now. Second person, okay, A. Most of you are choosing B. Okay, some of you are choosing C. Great. Let's start. 1st April 1934. Establishment of Reserve Bank of India. 1st April 1934, is it establishment of RBI? No. No. This is basically the RBI Act. 1934 is associated with RBI Act. Establishment of RBI is 1st April 1935. 2016, adoption of flexible inflation targeting. Yes, this pair is correct. 1998, adoption of multiple indicator approach. Yes, this is also correct. 1947, nationalization of Reserve Bank of India. No. 1949 is nationalization of Reserve Bank of India. So two pairs are incorrect. Two pairs are correct. Right option for the question will be option B. Only two are correct. Everybody is okay? Some of you are making mistake. Please be very careful. Please be very careful. The only reason I've given this kind of question is this is a very easy question. Easy question provided you have read the question very carefully. Very carefully. Right? Please read the questions carefully. Okay. Now let me go forward. So far what we have discussed. What we have discussed? Historical evolution. Now we have reached 2016. In 2016, I said Reserve Bank of India started implementing the concept of flexible inflation targeting. Now we will come to India's model of flexible inflation targeting in some time. But before that, is the India first country in the world? Is India the first country in the world to adopt flexible inflation targeting? Answer is no. Much before India, multiple countries have adopted flexible inflation targeting. Now, if UPSC will ask you how many countries have adopted flexible, or let's say inflation targeting, not flexible, inflation targeting. There are more than 40 countries, I said. This is the list of the countries which have implemented inflation targeting. Before you ask me, should you remember the table? Absolutely no. Please do not waste your time in memorizing all these particular countries and names. Absolutely no, don't waste your time. But certain important factual data you need to take away. What are the important factual data? Which was the first country to implement the inflation targeting? The first country to implement inflation targeting is New Zealand. New Zealand is the first country to implement inflation targeting. Second, how many countries have implemented inflation targeting? According to the RBI report, this is RBI report, okay? 48 countries have implemented inflation targeting. Question number 3. All the countries, do they use headline as the inflation target? Or is there any country which uses core inflation as an inflation target? There is one exception. Please make a note of this. The country Uganda. The country Uganda, which has implemented inflation targeting since 2011, uses core CPI. I repeat, the country Uganda, which has implemented inflation targeting from 2011, uses core CPI for inflation targeting. So these are certain very important points. Please make a note of this. The complete list is given here. The 40 plus countries, all of them put together, there are 8 advanced economies, and there are, there are 8 advanced economies which follow point target. Now, let me explain this. What is the basic meaning of flexible inflation target and point target? What is basically the concept of a point target and flexible inflation target? Point target means only one number is given as the target for maintaining. That is, that number is of inflation. For example, in case of India, the Reserve Bank of India is asked to maintain, has been directed by the government of India to maintain inflation at 4%. Inflation at 4%, that is CPI headline. But 4% is not the exact number. There is a certain flexibility. I repeat, there is certain flexibility which has been provided, that is 200 basis points. 4%, but with a certain flexibility. Right? They will also use the term headroom. Right? There is certain flexibility, freedom which has been provided. The 200 basis points simply means 2%. 2%. RBI has been given the target of 4%, but it can allow the inflation to reach maximum 6%. It can allow the inflation to reach lowest of 2%. This is flexibility. That's the reason we use the term flexible inflation target. Whereas there are other countries also which basically use a point target. Point target, no flexibility. Simply one number is provided. For example, look at the chart given here. Please look at the chart. Argentina, do they have any kind of flexibility in terms of inflation target? No, a point target 5%. Look at Albania. Do they have any kind of a flexibility in inflation target? No, a point target has been provided. Look at Georgia. Is there any flexibility? No, a point target has been provided. What about Euro area? Point target. What about Japan, Kazakhstan, right? Or for that matter, Norway or Russia for that matter? Very often cited in the newspapers now. Again, not the inflation target, but the country's name. So everybody is able to understand. These are some of the countries where there is inflation target, but it is a point target, not a flexible target. Everybody is okay with the concept of a point and a flexible target? Please do let me know in the chat section right now. So there are 15 countries which follow point target. There are 26 countries which follow point target with a tolerance band, that is above and below flexibility is provided. And there are certain countries, that is 7 countries, which do not have a point target, which simply have a range. What do you mean by this? Again, let me show you the table. Take the example of India. Can I simply say here, in case of India, there is a point target, but with a flexibility. That is, highest and the lowest band is provided. Whereas if you take Israel, Jamaica for that matter, look at these two countries. Israel and Jamaica, they do not essentially have a point target. They simply have a range. They simply have opted for a range. That is, Israel simply says inflation rate has to be between 1 and 3. Jamaica simply says inflation has to be between 4 and 6%. So essentially, please remember all of these can be asked in the preliminary examination. Question can be asked in the preliminary examination. There are countries which have directly a point to target. There are certain countries which have a point with the flexibility. And there are certain countries which do not have any kind of point and no flexibility in terms of point plus flexibility. They directly have a range target. And they directly have adopted a range target. So totally put together, according to the Reserve Bank of India's report, 48 countries right, have adopted inflation targeting in different manner. Is everybody okay with the discussion so far? Please do let me know before I go forward and start discussing the flexible inflation targeting mechanism in India. We have understood what has been adopted in the global market. Now, let's migrate, let's enter into the Indian market, understand what is the FIT provisions in the Indian market. Done. Let's go forward. Flexible inflation targeting, the model that has been adopted in India. The government of India, like I said earlier, the government of India, only couple of people are replying. What about others? What about others? Those who are there in the session, please do reply. A lot of will simply say, I will not reply. No, please reply. So that I understand that you are there in the session and more importantly, you are understanding the session. Aman Barnawal, sir, in India, point with tolerance band? Yes, my dear, 4% plus or minus 200 basis points. 4% plus or minus 200 basis points. Done. Thanks a lot. Let's go forward. Flexible inflation targeting model that has been implemented in India. Like I said earlier, the MPFA was signed in 2015. Monetary Policy Framework Agreement was signed in 2015. Later, we amended the Reserve Bank of India Act as well. And some of you might be thinking, sir, if we have signed an agreement with, let's say, the RBI has signed an agreement with the government, what is the need to amend the RBI Act? Is there a need to amend the RBI Act? Yeah, please remember that, yes, there is a need to make an amendment to the RBI Act of 1934. Reason being, whatever is the function of Reserve Bank of India, the provisions are there in the RBI Act of 1934. Whatever provisions, whatever functions, whatever is the roles and responsibility, etc., all of it basically flows from the concept of Reserve Bank of India Act of 1934. That's a reason we had to amend, right, the RBI Act and then basically implement the concept of flexible inflation targeting from 2016. Now, what are the important provision? Right, listen to me. Government of India would consult RBI and for a period of 5 years. I repeat, Government of India would consult RBI and for a period of 5 years an inflation target would be decided. Inflation target would be decided. In 2016 the model was implemented. So from 2016 plus 5 years, everybody will be okay with the number 2021. So first round of 5 years, what was the inflation target decided? 4% plus or minus 200 basis points. Now in 2021, again the discussion was conducted. At 2021, again the discussion was conducted. In 2021, basically, again it was decided that for the next 5 years, that is till 2026, we will carry with the same inflation target, 4% plus or minus, right, 200 basis points. So now we are in the year 2025. All of you will agree? Anybody who says no, sir, we're in 2020, we're still in the pandemic era, or somebody will say no, sir, where are you? We are in 2047. Right, 100 years of independence, already we are in that year. No, we are in 2025. So next year, The second round of 5 years, I repeat, next year, the second round of 5 year will be over. And we need to take a decision. Should we continue with the same inflation target or should we change the inflation target? So what are the questions asked by RBI? I'll tell you about it in some time. Don't worry. So this is the precise reason why inflation targeting is there in the discussion. But more importantly, I believe all of you are writing the exams in the year 2026. And you know by now, 2026 will be the year when the RBI will be implementing the third round of 5 years of inflation targeting. So automatically this particular topic will become important and relevant for your examination. So far so good. Next, the Monetary Policy Framework Agreement signed. It was signed in 2016, came into force in 2016, signed in 15, came into force in 16. Government has amended RBI Act for this, already explained. Under this, consultation with RBI will be held by the government. Then, as per this, RBI has to maintain inflation targeting at 4% plus or minus 200 basis points. Now, right, Anil Kumar is asking, what is this 200? My dear, it's not 300, by the way, it is 200. Right, please understand, 200 basis points. What is the meaning of it? 100 basis points is equal to 1 percentage. Always remember, 100 basis points is equal to 1 percentage. So 200 basis points will be equal to how much? 2 percentage. That is essentially the meaning of 200 basis points. Now, somebody is also asking, what is the point of saying 4% plus or minus 2%? Why can't we simply write it as 2 to 6%? Right? There is a huge difference in writing this and in writing this. Why? Let me explain it to me. Let me explain it to you people now. Right now, what is the target? Target is 4%. With the flexibility, yes. Point target is there, but with flexibility on either side. The target is 4%. Now, if you don't meet this particular target, if you allow the inflation to go beyond 4% for 3 consecutive quarters, if you allow the inflation to fall below 4% for 3 consecutive quarters, then you will have to give an explanation to Government of India. All of you are able to understand? Imagine you are the RBI governor. Why imagine? You are already RBI governor. At 620 you became, 720 you became RBI governors. So you are the RBI governors. If for 3 consecutive quarters inflation remains 5%, government will ask clarification from you. Why did you allow the inflation to reach 5%? Give me an explanation. Give me a written explanation. If inflation for 3 consecutive quarters is 3%, then the government will ask you, give me an explanation. Give me a written explanation. Why the inflation is at 3%? You do not have any option but to give an explanation to the government in that case. So please understand, 2 to 6% is not the inflation target. It is the lowest as well as the highest level in India. What is the actual inflation target? 4% plus or minus 200 basis points. And listen to me carefully. Please don't write in the exam 2% like this. Write it as a 200 basis points. Everybody is able to understand? Please write it as 200 basis points. Why? 2 percentage doesn't give you any kind of clarity. Meaning 2 percentage of 4 percentage or just a 2 percentage. There is no clarity with the number that you write. So always mention plus or minus 200 basis points. And so this particular provision is clear to all of you. Has it ever happened after the implementation of flexible inflation targeting? Has it ever happened that for 3 consecutive quarters the inflation has been above 4 or right below 4? Sorry, I said above 4 and below 4, above 6 and below 2. Okay, so above 6 and below 2 for 3 consecutive quarters. So in that particular case, has it ever happened in India? At any point of time, has the inflation gone above 6% for 3 consecutive quarters? Or has it fallen below 2% for 3 consecutive quarters? Any situation or any event that has taken place in India? Yes, During pandemic, this actually happened. Is the point clear? During pandemic, this actually took place. During pandemic, what happened was because of the supply side factor disruption. Because of, right, let's say supply side factor, that is basically labor unavailability, raw material unavailability, imports are becoming very difficult, etc. Supply side disruption took place. And because of the supply side disruption, inflation went beyond control. For 3 consecutive quarters, inflation was above 6% in India. Inflation was above 6% for 3 consecutive quarters. And please underline the term 3 consecutive quarters. That is also very important. 3 consecutive quarters. For example, let me ask you a question now. If I say February to October, please tell me, does it mean 3 consecutive quarters here? Let me see how many of you understand the term 3 consecutive quarters. Do let me know. If I write February to October, does it become 3 consecutive quarters? No, it is not 3 consecutive quarters. Basically, April, the new financial year will start in the month of April. April, May, and June. That is the quarter one. July, August, September is the quarter two. October, November, December is the quarter three. And finally, January, February, March is the fourth quarter. So, right, all of you are able to understand? So, 3 consecutive quarters. And I know some of you are writing. Rahasya is saying 9 months. No, don't write 9 months also. Please do not write 9 months. For example, February to October is 9 months, but not 3 consecutive quarters. What if I say, think of this, right? April, June, July to September, October to December. Can I call this as 3 consecutive quarters? July to, right? Let's say March. Can I call it as a 3 consecutive quarters? Last financial year, fourth quarter, and right? Let's say 2 quarters, right? The first and second quarters of this financial year. Can I call it as a 3 consecutive quarters? So please do let me know. Everybody is on the same page with me. Please do let me know everybody is on the same page. Somebody was asking about this particular point. Again, I repeat this. Earlier I said above and below 4%. No, above 6%, 3 consecutive quarters, you write a letter to government. Below 2% for 3 consecutive quarters, you write a letter to the government. Right? So point is 4, but with the flexibility of 2% on the either side. Now, whenever you write a letter as an RBI governor, when you write a letter to the government, there is no compulsion on the side of the government to make the letter public. As it happened back in 2022, as it happened, the government of India did not make the letter public. It is up to the government whether to publish the letter, whether to discuss the letter in the parliament, entirely the decision of the government of India. And finally, every 6 months, once every 6 months, RBI has to bring out a report. Report regarding what? Report essentially publishing what were the causes of inflation in the last 6 months. What will be the causes of inflation in the coming days? That is, in the future, what could be the causes? And in the past, what have been the causes? Right? So these are the important points associated with the flexible inflation targeting. Can I go forward now? Everybody is okay with the discussion so far? Can I go forward? Please do let me know. I want a confirmation from all of you. If you do not confirm, basically I'll stop the discussion. And I know some of you will basically say, great, great, I'm so happy. Please stop the discussion because I want to watch Kabaddi match. I'm watching that. I want to watch, right, Kahani Ghar Ghar Ki, etc., etc. So everybody is okay? Let me go forward now. Please solve this particular question. UPSC and life, I'll address your doubts. Just give me some time. I'll address your doubt. Okay, please solve the question. Which of the following have enabled the implementation of the flexible inflation targeting? The monetary policy framework was signed in 2015. RBI Act was amended. reconstitution of the Monetary Policy Committee. How many of the above right are correct? That is, how many? Only one of them has enabled, two of them have enabled, three of them have enabled. How many of them have enabled the implementation of the inflation targeting in India? Okay, some of you are saying A, some are saying B, some are saying C. But nobody is picking up D. Why? Somebody please pick up D. Why do you want to write alienate D always? Sir, I don't want to choose D. My dear, the right option is C. Right option is C. All the three have right basically helped in the implementation of flexible inflation targeting. What is that? Somebody was asking, sir, role of monetary policy committee. Let me explain that. Listen to me very carefully now. First and second is straightforward. Everybody is okay. First and second is very straightforward. Right? We have amended RB Act. Yes, that has helped us in the implementation of flexible inflation targeting. There was an agreement between the government as well as the Reserve Bank of India, MPFA. That also has helped in the implementation of flexible inflation targeting. But what is this monetary policy committee? Listen to me carefully. The policy rate in India. What is the policy rate in India? The policy rate is repo rate. I'm explaining the third statement. Listen to me carefully. The policy rate in India is what? Repo rate. Basically, the policy rate is decided by the Monetary Policy Committee, MPC. I'll start using the short form now. MPC. MPC decides the policy rate. Now, earlier, before the inflation targeting was implemented, please listen to me carefully. Before this was implemented, the Monetary Policy Committee consisted of 5 members. The Monetary Policy Committee consisted of 5 members. All the 5 of them were from Reserve Bank of India. And the chairperson, right, of this particular committee was RBI governor. Now the government of India simply said, no, the monetary policy committee under this particular concept, that is with the implementation of inflation targeting, we will change the monetary policy committee altogether. We will change the composition. Instead of 5 members, now currently in the monetary policy committee, how many members are there? 6 members are there. Compared to earlier committee, now there are 6 members. First very important difference. Second very important difference, earlier all the 5 members were from RBI. Now out of 6, 3 will be from RBI and 3 will be the experts appointed by government. Is my point clear? 3 will be from RBI, 3 will be the experts appointed by government. So now can I simply say the new monetary policy committee, the recomposed monetary policy committee is enabling the implementation of flexible inflation targeting. It is this committee which will take a call whether to increase interest rates, decrease interest rates, whether to increase money supply, decrease money supply according to what is the inflation rate in the domestic market. So first, second and third, all the three have enabled the successful implementation of flexible inflation targeting in India. So far so good. Now, what has been the performance? What has been the performance of flexible inflation targeting? Like I said, we have implemented, just a second. Like I said, we have implemented the flexible inflation targeting from 2016. Correct? So 2016. Please have a look at this. So after the implementation of flexible inflation targeting, can you see for most of the years, I repeat, for most of the years, inflation rate has been below 6% and above 2%. Yes or no? Almost in the range of 4%, but very few times the inflation rate has gone above 6%. That is basically, if you see the pandemic time period. This was the time period of the pandemic. And some of you basically will ask me, sir, how is that possible? How can RBI allow the inflation to go upwards like this? My dear, Earlier, I discussed supply side factors as well as demand side factors. Correct? Supply side as well as the demand side factors. And I also discussed what is the role of RBI. Think of it and do let me know. Can RBI influence the supply side factors which might contribute to inflation in the domestic market? I want an answer from all of you. Do you think RBI has the sufficient power to control the supply side inflation in the domestic market? For example, can RBI decide what will be the price of petrol sold in India? Can RBI increase right agriculture production? Aman Barnwal says yes. My dear, how? Tell me. You're the RBI governor. How can you control the prices of petrol? You tell me. How can you control the prices, right, of let's say tomatoes, tomato, call it whatever you want, of right, let's say commodities in the market? How can you control, right, let's say the tax rate, right, GST? How can you control the tax rate on the commodities? You tell me. So can I simply say RBI can play a very dominant role in controlling inflation if it is demand side, but RBI's tools will not be very effective. I repeat, very effective if the inflation is on the supply side. If the inflation is on the supply side, RBI is not very effective. It doesn't have all the effective tools. That is where the government of India will have to play a very important role whenever the inflation is on the supply side. And can I give you certain examples where you can think and basically say, yes, government of India is also implementing, government of India is also implementing policies to control supply side inflation. For example, my dear, please do let me know. All of you heard of Kanda Express? Let me see how many of you heard of this. All of you heard of the name Kanda Express? What was the Kanda Express? It was basically a railway that was run from one part of India to other part of India. That is from Maharashtra to the capital, the northern part of India, carrying carrying onion, carrying onion, however you want to pronounce. Don't worry about the pronunciation. Everybody is able to understand. So, what was the logic of government of India running this particular train by the name of Kanda Express? Government of India was worried that the prices of onion in certain markets in northern part of India were very high. But in the other part of India, for example, Maharashtra, there is too much of a supply. There is a wholesale market there. Purchase from there, transport it, sell it at subsidized prices in the region where there's a deficit. And this is one example. I can keep on quoting multiple examples where government of India has implemented reforms to control inflation. And this has been from the side of supply. Everybody is able to understand the logic now. Everybody is able to understand. RBI doesn't have the effective tools to control supply side inflation. Government of India has to play a very important role. Done? Can we go forward now? Please solve this particular question. Since the implementation of FIT, the headline inflation has never crossed the 6% mark. Since the implementation of FIT, the core inflation has never crossed 6% mark. Anybody, what is the answer? D, option C, option D. Option A can't be the answer. And I hope you understand. Option A can't be the answer. Since the implementation of FIT, the headline inflation has never crossed the 6% mark. Here itself, you can see there have been certain instances where the inflation, that is, the headline inflation has crossed a 6% mark. Yes, it has crossed. Since the implementation of FIT, the core inflation has never crossed the 6% mark. This statement is true. This statement is true, right? This is true, right? Since the implementation of FIT, the core inflation has never crossed core. Again, I'm talking about core here, not headline. Headline has kept on crossing 6%. Core has not crossed 6%. right? So basically the second statement is true. Right option is option B. Only 2 is correct. Okay. Now, right, for the purpose of information, I've given this particular table. Please go through that. Do not memorize everything. What is the importance of this particular table? Listen to me carefully. Please listen to me carefully. Right, the importance of this particular table is you have a basket. In the basket, there are food commodities. The food commodities, right? Essentially, if you look at the India's basket, the food commodities has the highest weightage. This is the importance of this particular table. Right? The food commodities have the highest weightage, 45.9%. The food commodities have the highest weightage. That is basically the importance of this particular table. Beyond this, please do not memorize anything that is there in the table. Don't waste your time. Just because the table is given doesn't mean that basically the complete information is important. No. Let's look at one factor, go forward. Now let's go forward here. What is the latest information? Right, so far what we have understood. Some of you might be thinking, sir, what is happening? We started with the role of RBI. Then we arrived at 2016, from where flexible inflation targeting has been implemented. From 2016, the FIT has been implemented. What has been the performance of FIT? We have seen so far. Provisions of FIT, we have seen so far. Now, what is the latest information? The current affairs. Let's attach the current affairs. What is the information now? According to the latest data, the Reserve Bank of India now has sought feedback. It has asked the public, right? That is, RBI simply says, I want to make certain changes. I want to make certain changes in the, right, let's say, the RBI, the inflation targeting framework. Because 2026, we have to implement another round of flexible inflation targeting. So for that, I am thinking of making certain changes. Can you provide your feedback on it? What is the feedback? Let's start. One, RBI is asking, please have a look at the questions here. Should I continue to target headline inflation that I'm doing right now? Or should I shift to core inflation? Should I shift to core inflation? Should I target headline or should I shift to core? Why? I've already told you this argument. The headline inflation, please understand, includes food and fuel. Includes food and fuel. Right? And when you include food and fuel, the prices are very volatile for the food and fuel. The overall inflation will become very high or will become very, very low because of food and fuel articles. So between headline and core, core is a much more stable. So should I target core and should I move away from headline? That is one question. Second question, right now, what is the target of inflation? Target for inflation is 4%. Target for inflation is 4%. So should I keep this particular inflation target at 4%? Should I change the target? Should I change the target? Should I make it 5%? Should I make it 4.5%? Should I reduce it to 3%? What is your viewpoint? Provide a feedback. Third, should there be a revision of tolerance band? Should there be a revision for the tolerance band? What is the tolerance band here? 4% plus or minus 200 basis points. So should I revise this? Instead of 200 basis points, should I make it 150 basis points on either side? Should I make it 100 basis points on the either side? Should I revise the tolerance band? That is the third question. Finally, should the inflation target be removed and instead the range only? For example, earlier I've shown you some of the countries use range rather than using a target, they use a range. Right? So should I adopt that? So these are the four questions on which the feedback has been sought by Reserve Bank of India from the public. Now, within this, let me focus on why the right measure is whatever RBI is using right now. What is RBI using? That is essentially 4% plus or minus 200 basis points. Most of the experts argue that we should continue with this. Don't change anything. This has worked out well for India. Let's continue with the same idea. Why? Before the implementation of inflation targeting, the average rate of inflation for 5 years was more than 5%. In fact, it was around 5.7%. I repeat the statement. Before FIT was implemented, for 5 years, the inflation was on an average 5.7%. Once the inflation targeting regime was implemented, the average rate of inflation is around 3.47%. 3.47. So it has been almost right on the range of 4%. So if we are able to control the inflation around 4%, why the need to make a change? Don't change. Let's go ahead with that. Your argument is, should I change the band? Instead of 200, should I make it, right, let's say 100 basis points or 50 basis points? Tolerance band, should I change or remove it altogether? Experts say, please don't. Let's keep the same tolerance band. Why? In case of India, the target we use is headline inflation. Correct? Headline. And the RBI is in favor of headline. Despite there are calls to use core, there is RBI is in the favor of headline. Why? Just think of this. Headline includes food and fuel articles. If RBI will make a policy on a basket which doesn't include food and fuel, which will affect you, which will affect me, policy will affect, food and fuel prices will affect. So don't you think RBI is neglecting what is right happening in the households then? RBI is not aware of what is happening in the household activities. What is the burden on the households? So the policy is not representation of what is happening in the households. Policy doesn't represent whole of the economy. It represents only the part of the economy. Right? So that's the reason Reserve Bank of India has been in favor of using, I repeat, using the headline inflation instead of core inflation. Right? So when you use headline, obviously the food and fuel prices are very volatile. And when you know that these are very volatile, have a better flexibility. The threshold, 200 basis points that you have provided, is sufficient for us. It will basically protect RBI. It will not pressurize RBI. What do you mean by that? Imagine instead of 200 basis points, the flexibility was 100 basis points. In that case, for a large period of time, right? Can you look at the graph now? For large period of time, for multiple years, inflation would be more than 5%. And that is because of food and fuel articles. RBI's hands will be tied. RBI will have to make changes in the interest rates because the inflation rate is above 5, and that is happening because of food and fuel prices. The argument of the experts is, don't make any changes. Whatever is there right now, it is working very well for India. If something is not broken, why fix it? Right? So that's the reason headline inflation is used by RBI. Let's continue with targeting headline inflation. Right? The 4% target is working for India. Let's keep 4%. The 200 basis threshold is working for India. Let's keep the threshold of 200 basis points on either side of the right target of 4%. But again, please understand, is there argument in favor of core inflation? Of course, yes. Because core is much more stable. The food and fuel articles are very volatile. As a result of this, inflation will also become very volatile. RBI will be forced to make changes very often because of, yeah, right, let's say the changes in the headline inflation. So, is there an argument in favor of core? Yes. But RBI is not willing to change the stance. Right, in the first set of 5 years, we adopted headline. In the second set of 5 years, we have adopted headline. We have adopted headline and we have implemented the flexible inflation targeting in a very successful manner so far. Everybody is okay? Do let me know. So this is basically the discussion I wanted to have in the context of the inflation targeting mechanism. Right? So based on the discussion that we have had so far, please take up this particular descriptive question for answer writing purposes. RBI is shifting its target to core will be akin to ignoring the lived reality of the households in India. Do you agree? Discuss 150 words. Right? Answer is expected to be written in 150 words and a 10 marker question. So these are the very important concepts associated with inflation targeting. We started from the basics, then understood the role of RBI or evolving role of RBI over a period of time till 2015, then MPFA, flexible inflation targeting, what are the provisions, how it has functioned or performed in case of India, and then basically, right, what is the discussion, right? In the current affairs, what is the discussion? Done? Okay, so now if you have any kind of questions or issues or confusion regarding whatever I've discussed in the last 1.5 hour, please do let me know. UPSC and life, summarize. My dear, that's what I told you. Just now I've told you the summary of whatever I've discussed. Please do let me know. Any kind of questions, any kind of issues, etc. Please do let me know. If we shift to core inflation arguments, my dear, I've told you, right? Why should you shift to core? You should shift to core because core is more stable. Core is more stable compared to headline, more stable. And if you have a stable inflation target, right, the policy making will also be much more stable. There'll be no volatility in terms of policy making, etc. That is basically the argument. Huh. What is the difference between FIT and range targeting? My dear, flexible inflation targeting model that we have implemented is basically we have taken 4% and on the either side, we have given a freedom or flexibility or threshold. Range is you do not have a point target. I've explained this earlier also. Range is you do not have a target. Point target is not there. Essentially, you take a range of inflation rate. Right? There is no target number. There is a range as a target for you. That is the difference. What is the disinflation? The disinflation essentially means the inflation rate is slowing down. The change in the inflation rate is slowing down. That is disinflation. For example, right, have a look at this. Let's say price levels are moving like this 100 to 110, right? And 110 to 115, 115 to 116 rupees. Please tell me, is there inflation here? Is there inflation? Of course, yes. Price levels are increasing. But when you calculate the price changes, that is when you calculate percentages, can I simply say percentage from here to here will become lower. From here to here, the percentage inflation rate will be much smaller. That is essentially the concept of disinflation. That is, the rate of inflation is slowing down. Okay, any other questions? Any other doubts? Why developed nation prefer low inflation rate? My dear, not just the developed countries, any country for that matter, there is something called as healthy rate of inflation. For India, we presume because it's a fast growing country, we presume because the growth rate expected in India is 8%, 10%, 12%, etc. So we expect because of that kind of a growth rate, inflation, healthy rate of inflation is around 4%. But for a developed economy such as USA, you can't expect, right, a large economy such as USA to grow at 12% or 10% for that matter. So there the growth rate, annual growth rate target as well as achievement will be much, much lower number. The inflation rate will also be a lower number. Okay. Next, growth versus inflation. My dear, growth is basically achieved by increasing money supply. But when you increase money supply, the demand for the goods and services will also increase, and that might cause inflation. So when you try to achieve higher growth, one of the normal outcomes, right, will also be inflation. But when you try to control inflation, money supply will go down, and that will have a limitation on the GDP growth. Right? So if you want to control growth, I'm sorry, if you want to control inflation, growth will become a collateral damage. That is growth versus inflation discussion or debate, by the way. Uh, Sir, is watching only newspaper analysis video and your weekly analysis enough for economics? My dear, Practice mains answer writing as well. Please practice mains answer writing. Structure of the answer. My dear, we have discussed. No, you just need to consolidate whatever we have discussed. In the introduction, please write, right, the recent debate that has been happening. Try to introduce current affairs in the introduction as much as possible, right? The Reserve Bank of India sought feedback from the public regarding the inflation targeting. Then come to the main body. Right now, RBI uses headline inflation for inflation targeting. But if it will shift to the core inflation, what are the concerns? Mention those particular concerns. And in the conclusion, you can write, this is the reason why RBI needs to continue targeting headline, not core inflation. Done? Okay. Okay, done then. So that's it from my side in today's session. That's it from my side. Take care. See you tomorrow, sharp at 7 p.m. If you're liking this initiative, do not forget to hit the like button. If you're yet to join our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. See you tomorrow, sharp at 7 p.m. with one more very important topic, GST 2.0. We'll understand 1.0 from 2017, what was implemented, what was the requirement of the reforms, why the reforms have been implemented, what are the implications of the reforms. That will happen in tomorrow's. Take care. See you tomorrow. Right. Good night.